All right, another video about the Fezzari. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Fezzari. It's crazy because as you start to ride your bikes for a little bit longer, you get a stronger and stronger feel for them. I've made several videos about the journey on this bicycle, from, you know, my initial getting it to not loving the drivetrain. And, you know, I had one person I was talking to in the comment section who was kind of like, you know, saying, oh, darn, it's a shame that GRX 400 drivetrain sucked. And don't get it twisted. I don't want to say that it sucked. There was a lot of things that were positive about the drivetrain, like the hydraulic braking has been wonderful on this bike. So the braking system has been wonderful. It's just really, I've really had problems. The shifters have been solid. I just had problems with the derailleur system. Like I had problems with the rear derailleur. But really the front derailleur was my main issue. The rear derailleur, I think, was my fault when it got bent. I think I was probably just riding off-road and I probably bent it on something. I just wasn't as conscious as I am now that when you go off-road, you really have to take care of that derailleur. If it bumps on a rock or something, it can get really bent out of shape. So, but the front derailleur, it never shifted well. It came to me not shifting well, and I never was able to get that going. And so eventually I ended up just turning this bike into a 10-speed and couldn't be happier. I'm one of those people who, after riding for a while with your drivetrain, I realized it's more about the range of gears that you have than the amount of gears. And if anything, I'm really reluctant to go beyond 10 speed because I don't need it. So I don't envision why I would need more than 10 speeds for the type of riding I do. The last bike I had before I got these gravel bikes was a 3x9. That was it was way more gears than I needed. And then I started to, think, the less gears you have, the better the bike shifts. And if you take it in an extreme case, what's the best shifting bike is one that doesn't have to shift. Like a fixed gear is going to have the least amount of problems. And then once you add shifting into your cycling, you're going to have to maintain the shifting or do maintenance on it. And so my theory is just the less gears that you can have that you can manage and just live with is the best situation for you. If you don't need more, don't get more, because all more is going to do is cause more problems and have more maintenance and more things that you're going to have to take care of. And so over time, you're not going to get it ride a 10 speed right away in Seattle because it's hilly and I was nervous. I was like, can I do it? But after kind of doing the calculations, I know that's the nerdy part, but you really can do the calculations of your, and I have a drivetrain video, so please watch that and it'll help you figure out what kind of drivetrain you need for the type of terrain you're going to be riding. Seattle, hilly. Okay, so that's, if you watch my videos, you can't see it from the videos, but it's a hilly place. So meaning you got to go uphill, you got to go downhill. So you need a bike that's good at ascending and good at descending. The Cannondale was an amazing bike. It was fast. It could go uphill really well, sketchy downhill. Road bikes don't love going downhill on skinny tires with the road bike geometry. This Fezzari, it really rides like a mountain bike more in a lot of ways. Like, especially the wider the tires you get, it can have clearance for 50. I've not bought a set of 50 millimeter tires. I could have, but I've chose to go with the Schwalbe 45s just because, I don't need anything more than 45s. But, riding on 45s is an amazing experience compared to the skinny tires. Way more comfortable, way more stable. Don't have to dodge anything. I just roll over bumps. So as you go through the city and you're rolling through chunky stuff, it's just way more fun to ride. And now, it's interesting because I have the Poseidon and I have the Fezzari, and I did make a video because someone made a comment that made a video saying like, I seem more stoked on the Poseidon than the Fezzari. At the end of the day, the Poseidon is probably I can easily say better value. If you wanted to ride a bike today and you had a budget that wasn't high and you bought a Poseidon, the Poseidon X that I have, it's a great bike. You know what I mean? Like, so it's hard. It's really hard to not sing the praises of a bike that's $1,000, $1,200 the way I configured it, that rides just as fun as the Fezzari, does at, $2,400. There are some differences though. Like the Fezzari is more rugged, it's more comfortable, it's more stable. Not that much more of those things, but a little bit more. You can feel it. But they virtually can do the same types of things. But funnily enough, I actually think that the Poseidon X is a faster bike if you configured it for speed. If you were trying to coax more speed out of the bike path and trying to turn it into an all-road bike, the Fezzari, it is fast for what it is. It's fast for its wide tire ruggedness, but it's more kind of, to me, skewed to the mountain bikey side of a gravel bike. It's like right on the edge of that gravel, the mountain bikey side, than it is on the racy side. I almost feel like the Poseidon X is a faster, twitchier, more nimble bike. This is more like stable. Like when it hits different surfaces, when it hits rugged stuff, it just doesn't budge. It's more movable. It's more what I call stompy. I don't know, if that's a real term. Stompy in terms of like I can just go over all the surfaces and not really care. The Poseidon absorbs chatter really well. So it's not like, because it's an aluminum bike, I still don't feel the chatter like I did on the Cannondale. That's 30 years of technology and building frames for you probably, and the wider tires and the tubeless setup that I ride. But this Fezzari is super comfortable. It's a very, very comfortable. They're both very comfortable bikes, but the Fezzari is just a kind of a little bit more so. Now, when you take in the price difference, would I say it's worth it? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have the money and you can only afford one, it's obvious the choice. So that's kind of why I will sing the praises of the Poseidon X more, because I don't love this term, but punch above its price range or whatever. I feel like the Poseidon X, it just gives you slightly better value. Whereas this is like, you buy this kind of bike because you don't care, because it's just a dope bike. And that being said, I bought this in the lowest spec configuration. You can get for Shafers that are $7,000, right? Just depending on what you're trying to do with it. And I over time, I'm looking to upgrade it, so I don't mind getting the low spec one and then upgrading it over time. But really, the 10-speed. The 10-speed conversion that I did from the 20-speed has been amazing. I just put a wide range 1150 on the back. A little unconventional, this setup. I put a Elchwu G7. I did a ton of research online to see if that'll be compatible with the GRX 400 shifters, and they are. So that has been cool. It's been, as far as keeping up with road bikes, this gravel bike, there are certain things that it cannot do as well. It's just the Shafer, it's not as twitchy. It's not a twitchy bike. It's a kind of takes a minute to get its speed up. But what it is, it's pretty stable at slow speeds, and then it's pretty stable at very stable at high speeds. And then whereas you used to be descending in the city was scary and kind of nerve-wracking, on this bike, on the Shafer, when you point this thing downhill, it's just like, it's so steady, like that it's fun. It's not, some descents can be scary. These ones are mostly fun because it's just so stable heading downhill. And, that's kind of what I wanted out of these bikes. I was always, I grew up playing sports, and when I would see this Tour de France and stuff, it's cool to see that stuff, but I always knew that, like, that's not how I'm trying to ride. Like, that's cool that they can do that, and it's inspiring to watch that stuff, but I'm not trying. That's not how I grew up riding, and that's not how I'm trying to ride. So the concept of getting like a slammed road bike was always silly to me. It was just like, and then when I tried it and it just never fit well, I was very quick to be like, yeah, I'm good. So it's just, to me, it's awesome. Gravel bikes are really the bike that I've always been looking for. So it's interesting when people are like, is it a gimmick or not a gimmick? It's like, to me, these are the perfect type of bikes for me. And I think they're the perfect type of bikes for a lot of people, because most of us are not trying to be slammed down there in this super aerodynamic position and da-da-da. It's like, I want to be comfortable. And, I think what I am is more of a randonneur in terms of, I just like cycling for the fun of it. I like it for the scenery. I like it for the bike dorkery. I like nerding out about bike parts. So just kind of all of the aspects of it. I've always liked exercising and physical, physical exertion. I've always liked going outside. I always grew up playing sports. So it's kind of like, as an adult, it's a no-brainer in terms of like trying to get some no-impact exercise. And so, yeah, this bike has just been allowed me to just go adventure. The Fezzari, the one thing about it is I'm not used to a bike like this in terms of like there's no rack on it or anything, and I'm not using it for utilitarian purposes. It's purely for sport, like sporty, riding around town and being fit and having fun and finding trails and finding chunder that I can rock down. So it's interesting having a bike that you don't use. You know what I mean? I've never owned a bike that I wasn't like, I'm using this for transportation. I certainly do not use this for transportation. This is not a bike that I would want to lock up in a bike rack somewhere. To me, it's just it costs me too much to want to do that. Like, lock it up and go da-da-da-da. I'd rather take the Poseidon. So that's another thing about this bike. It's like, it's a very specific, like, this is the kind of bike you'd want to take to the wilderness or take on an adventure or take long places where you wouldn't see other people, so you don't need to lock it up. I'd never want to lock this type of bike up. It just, I don't know if it sounds weird to say, but it just looks weird in the bike rack to me compared to my other bikes. I'm like, I don't want it in the bike rack. I don't want people to like slam their bike up against my bike, and you know what I mean. Like, I'm that ninja, I'm just like, nah, duh. So that's this type of bike to me. It's like that kind of like just fancy she bike that I'm like, don't touch it, So I don't want to put it in the bike rack, and I don't want to do all those things. And to me, that's kind of a negative, honestly, like, because, riding, the more I ride, the more I'm like, it should just be chill. You know what I mean? It should be a chill experience. I shouldn't mind getting some scrapes and scratches on my bike. And that's one thing about carbon, is that, like, I'm just like, you know what I mean? So I think in the future, it depends on my financial future and how much space, but there's nothing wrong with having a carbon bike. And if, I had the money, I'd have a carbon bike and other bikes too. But if I could only have one bike, it definitely would not be a carbon bike. I really consider it a luxury or something you do for competition purposes. But so, that's kind of my view on the Fezzari. It's amazing. It's going to keep up with your fast gravel rides. It's super fast for a gravel bike. So what it is it's fast off-road. But the thing is, the thing about the Fezzari, where it shines the most, you don't get to ride it that much on those type of surfaces. There's just not that much gravelly wilderness out near me, so there probably is. If I drive, I could get more out of this bike. But in terms of if you're just keeping it mostly on the bike path, it's almost a little bit lost on you, and you almost like, the Poseidon X is enough. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't need that much more. Like, the 42 millimeter tires that I have on the Poseidon X are super stable, and they upright. It's a chill, fun ride. I'm kind of elaborating on a video I made earlier, but really what I'm trying to say is that you don't really need this to go faster. I really think like the Poseidon X, you could do some fun, fast gravel if you configured it differently than mine. Mine is set up in a very upright position with a very long stem and H handlebars, and kind of is a more goofy setup. But if you set it up for speed and made it like a 2x with an all-road, with my Specialized tires, and you were in a more aerodynamic position as you rode, it would be a pretty fast bike in terms of it could keep up with your group rides. Absolutely. And this is coming from someone who rides that Fezzari with one of my riding buddies, Uncle Dan. He rides a road bike that's a 90s road bike, and those are fast. Those are fast bikes and hard to keep up with, I'd say, just because they're so light and specced out for just pavement surfaces. But, I can keep up with him on my Fezzari, and the stronger I become as a rider, I can keep up with him. So I almost think like, well, if I can keep up with a road bike and I can still go and hit the trails, you kind of got the best of both worlds. And as far as keeping up with the group gravel rides, this Fezzari, yes, it's going to be able to do it. This is a fast gravel bike in terms of off-roading, and that it is fast off-road. It is very fast off-road, and then very comfortable off-road too, and very stable off-road in terms of that, the kind of gravel that I ride. Slightly loose stuff, hard pack, packed dirt. It's gonna go hard on that and feel fun to ride. So that's really what it is about the Fezzari. It is amazing in places that you don't often get to ride, those places where it shines the most. But when you do get to ride those places, or you just like, man, I just want to ride more and more of this. Like literally, it's the kind of bike that makes you want to go. It is the kind of bike that when you look at some of these gravel events on long, hard packed surfaces, like the one in Kansas, I forget, I don't know, Unbound or something like that. This is the type of bike you would go to Unbound with and try to test it out on, because it can handle that just chattery surface for hours and hours and hours. That's one thing about the Fezzari that I really feel like it could handle hard. It could handle rough surfaces for longer periods of time than the Poseidon could, because the Poseidon is less rugged. But if I was doing a cyclocross event where it was twitchy and turny and not as rugged, the Poseidon X. More rugged, Fezzari.